He was the guy that turned me on to Eric Johnson when I was doing.
Because he's on the first record.
Well, no, and he's on the second record. Yeah, he was the one when they hired me to be on the second record.
Yeah.
I played a bunch of shit on that.
Yeah.
And he says, "Hey man, Luke," he goes, "You ever heard of this guy Eric Johnson?" I said, "I heard him." He goes, "You should hear this cat do Hendrix and shit." Like,
Because they were both from Texas.
well, yeah, he's from
Right.
Austin. They knew they were friends. They always still are friends.
Yeah.
And Chris can fucking play.
Chris is a great player.
Yeah, just so you know. I mean, and he's also a sweet guy.
I made a video about that. The solo on "Ride Like the Wind" is the greatest solo you can't hear.
Well, you should
because
listen
it's not
to my
loud.
first album, man. Paige buried me the whole
They
record.
buried you the whole time. I know. What's up with that?
I used to get mad at it, but I was 19 at
Why
the time.
did they do that?
I don't like the guitar solo's too loud. It bothers me. I go, damn,
my
it's
God.
a solo. I fought with him for years. The first two albums.
Yeah.
Get to go like.
I mean, White Sister, these solos. I want to hear these things. I want to hear what you're playing. They're way too buried in the mix.
Do you understand the arm wrestle I had back then?
But this was a common thing. It wasn't just on your records.
No, I
Because
know.
the Christopher Cross on "Ride Like the Wind," he plays a solo at the end. You can't even hear it.
You can hear it.
Michael
but you
McDonald's.
You have to wince to go. It's like.
Michael McDonald's background vocals are louder. Not that that's a bad thing. They're great. Yeah.
Well, Michael Lombardi, the guy who produced the record, is a great friend. He was one of the only guys, maybe the only guy
that could sight read his piano.
They could sight read Donald Fagen's piano parts, which I'm sure Donald wrote dynamic markings and everything. Detail was their thing, and that's the detail that we all love and
That's
respect. Because he was right. I mean, but a lot of cats, man, sit down like Phil and Gaines could do that. Phil and Gaines could read their part, man. The solo on Donald's solo album, which is one of my desert island albums, The Nightfly.
Yeah.
Ruby Baby, that piano solo is like the perfect piano solo. That was like one take,
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato 2. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you.
Okay, if Steely Dan were around with Pro Tools, would they have ever finished a record?
Probably a lot faster. I don't know. I think there was something about when you get hired to play on one of those records, because I didn't. I would have loved to have, but I know all the guys that did and what was like, I think they dug the process of making people bleed for it because it's different than programming it.
Right.
There's something I can't even articulate verbally that would explain what that must be. It's kind of an X factor. It's like you get 4 or 5 guys in a room with 4 different kinds of time feel, where this thing becomes group time, where everybody's, one guy might be a little ahead, one guy plays a little back, but somehow it falls into this thing. And you can't write it out, and you can't rehearse it.
Right.
Matter of fact, some of the worst things you can do is rehearse a record before you go in the studio and get all your good shit out at rehearsal. They'd hire different rhythm sections and even doing the same song, and they had the money to do this. They spent their money on the records,
Right.
It was their art. This is what they lived. They knew what they wanted, even if other people didn't understand it. I can't speak for Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, but I'm just, from what I've heard and how much of a fan I am and what I listened to, and the way Jeff Porcaro would talk to me about what those sessions were like.
I think that Larry Carlton told me that when they did Asia, that track, because somebody else played drums on it the day before, and he walked in the studio and Steve Gadd was there the next day. He goes, and he saw the charts. I guess we're doing that again.
Yeah.
And
you know the Steve Gadd story?
What? No, let's hear it.
Now, hope Steve, don't be mad at me, man. Maybe I'm getting this a little wrong, but the legend has it that Steve showed, and that was a 12-page chart. Without doubt. I mean,
of course.
It's one of the greatest pieces of music ever written for popular music, if you will.
Yeah.
One of the greatest performers. Larry did the chart.
Right.
They went to Larry because Larry's massive ears. He's one of the greats of all time. Larry Carlton, come on, man.
Yeah. We give it up for Larry.
I call him Sensei.
Yes.
He had those charts, and I remember being up his pad, man. He's like, hey, you want to see the chart? And I'm like, yeah, man, let me see what that looked like. And he would write out the really important stuff. The right voicings and the right rhythmic
the
notation.
hits that needed to happen.
But you noticed on these charts, there was room. He came up with all of his parts.
Mm-hmm.
Those great,
amazing.
Asia.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on,
So
man.
good.
You know, only he'd come up with something great
That's
like
right.
that. You know what I mean? So there was stuff like that. But, you know, he would tell me stories about just what it was like. But Gad came in, and he was a little late. He was always late back then. You know, it was a joke about the New York guys would always come in 4 or 5 hours late. And we're sitting around getting paid for doing nothing, you know. That's how they did things in New York.
Okay.
But anyway, long story short, I wasn't on the date, but this was told to me guys who were on the session. That he came in late and he was, you know, maybe had a little too much fiesta the night before. I mean, this guy's been sober for like 40 years, but this is a long time ago. So, and I wasn't there, but this was told me. He looked a little like, oh God, is this guy, you know. And, you know, Steve just put the chart up, they counted it off, and that was the take.
Oh my God.
They did one, it came to done maybe 1 or 2 takes, but whatever it is the record. That solo machine. And he's sight reading that.
That's unbelievable.
Man, Steve's one of the great. I spent some time with Steve back in the day. I love, we used to hang a lot. I haven't seen him in a long time. He's out with James Taylor and Clapton and all these guys. One of the greats of all time.